Hey guys, how you doing? Um, so just in case you're one of those people who only clicks on videos with certain names in the title, if you think that they're going to be uh, one way or another, just so you know, this might not be the video for you. Trigger warning: I'm not making fun of anyone except for academia. So, there's your trigger warning. There it goes. All right. So this will be the third and final installment of the deep dive I've done into the hundreds of academic journal articles that mentioned Anita Sarkeesian. I have seen a few trends in that most of the mentions of her like to mention the fact that she was harassed, that she had a video game made about her being beaten up, um, that she was not not able to speak at a university because of bomb threats, stuff like that, right? And not much about her actual body of work. Uh, and I would say about 50% of the articles we've seen and that I've seen in doing the deep dive even further, about 50% of them don't even mention what she actually says. It just mentions what happened to her. So take that for what it is. I'm going to get through this installment of this series so that I can move on to other things, just because I like closure. You guys like closure? I like closure. I promise at the end, I saved the best of all of these articles for last, and it is so good that you'll probably want to go find it at your local library or download it somewhere and read it yourselves. Okay, I think you can even find it on Google Scholar. So here we go for the last of the studies that mentioned Anita Sarkeesian. Okay, so we've got this is from Karen Dunbar in CR Redo, Broadening the Circle. That's her title of her article. And this was from the Extra Contemporary Art Quarterly. And Anita is mentioned once in here because she's faced persistent threats in both the virtual and real world. But also, she is included amongst some pretty cool artworks here as an artist. So um, that's cool. You know, it's not all negative press inside this one. But what I thought was interesting about this one, with all of these different instances of uh, art and some of them activism art, I'll call it. This one right here, I thought was the most interesting. This is all the text messages that the guys were sending back and forth in the Steubenville rape case, just put up on a wall for people to be able to just sit down on this bench here and read what these guys were texting each other. And one of them follows. Trent Mays says, "Barks, we're hitting it for real." And then Anthony Craig says, "Wait for me, LOL." And then Trent Mays, or I say, Anthony says, "Where you at? Where's she?" Trent Mays says, "Still at Mark's, but why?" And Anthony says, "How dead is she?" And Trent Mays says, "Not at all. She's looking for her phone." And then Anthony replies, "That shit's probably long gone in the streets by now. What did you do with her?" So yeah, alongside activism such as this, where the art is basically uh, an installation where you get to see the horrors of the world. You get to see the videos of Anita Sarkeesian along with carrying a mattress around a university. So I think it elevates Anita in a way to that kind of level of activism with her YouTube channel. So I think this is a pretty good message. Get this out of the way. Next, um, this mention of Anita Sarkeesian comes to us from an article called "If Art Education, Then Critical Digital Making," and that's kind of the grammatical use of code right there. If then, right there. Um, these titles for these studies, they're always really, I want to say, clever. But in it, Anita Sarkeesian is known because she analyzed how specific world viewpoints are explicitly used in game algorithms, right? That's all she is referenced for in this study. And I think that's great because it's actually referencing her based on her work rather than what happened to her. That's why I included it in this final video about all of this, is that this one study right here is a good citation. And when I say good, I don't mean like good for Anita Sarkeesian. I mean just good in that they're not talking about what happened to her when citing her. They're talking about what she's actually saying. Okay, so the next one, um, I'm not sure if this is good or bad because sometimes the lines are blurry when you're talking about feminists that like to fight each other. Like there's the serfs versus the turfs versus the rad femmes versus the whatever. This is one of those articles, right? And so Anita is mentioned right here, and it says one commenter expresses approval of another's objection to slut walk as, in effect, a post feminist event because it assumes there is no patriarchal context that slut walk exists within, right? And that's a quote of Anita Sarkeesian. Again, I'm just saying that this is a good uh, citation because it's again not about what happened to her, but actually about the discourse. So that was in this article called Slut Walking in the Shadow of the Law by Deborah Turkheimer in the Minnesota Law Review. Um, Next, we have Impotence, Nostalgia, and Objectification, Patriarchal Visual Rhetoric to Contain Women. I'm clicking, right? So in this one, Sarkeesian is noted for bringing about the term straw feminist, and it goes into uh, detail as to what they mean by straw feminist. And this was actually the first time I'd seen the term, but I get what it means right away. Um, but it says the straw feminist directly threatens men and functions to pit women against men in false binary, uh, yada yada. Um, the feminist figure is often the hated character who is ultimately dismissed. It's pretty good citation of Sarkeesian, I'd say, in this one. Next, we have The Object of the Game: Authority, Art, and Gamergate by Anita Lowe in the Harvard Political Review. And Sarkeesian is mentioned once in this two-page uh, article, and her picture is right there at the Game Developers Choice Awards, right? So I was actually surprised that Sarkeesian was only name dropped once in it. Yeah. Next one. This is Naming and Reframing: A Taxonomy of Attacks on Knowledge Organization by Tina Gross. That's her. And let's see. In this one, I feel like Anita is given too much credit because she's kind of given the prestige of having popularized the term gish galloping, right? When it was not Anita Sarkeesian who popularized gish galloping. Okay, I know because as a member of the online atheist community, this term had been used in some of the YouTubers that I like to watch at least 2 or 3 years before Anita Sarkeesian even broke out on the scene as a popular online contributor to the discourse. So, um, yeah, it wasn't her. Um, in this one, it's called Social HR, Not Quite Ready for Prime Time. Um, this is a troubling article because it basically is making the argument when it's mentioning Sarkeesian right here. Uh, making the argument knowing this meaning all the things that happened in Anita Sarkeesian with getting hateful tweets like 150 in a single week. It says, what HR vice president would want to risk attempting to leverage Twitter as a social platform within the politically correct and litigation prone world of employee relations? So, wow. I mean, this is this is referencing what happened to Anita Sarkeesian, but it's also referencing when she was talking about it, when she documented these hate-filled tweets. And I'm going to say that it's a good reference because of the overall point that they're making, but it's just like all of the bad references that I've been seeing, the 50% of them that only talk about uh, the harassment she's gotten. But in the context of the whole paper, I'll call it good. What sucks though is basically she's used as an example of how your Twitter presence can go bad and how it can ruin your uh, image of your company. So, yeah, that was a bummer. Moving right along. Um, so, in this one, this article is called "Racism and Stereotypes in Electronic Media," and when Anita is mentioned, it's because of the body of work that she has here on YouTube um, and her TED Talk. And also, it has death threats, the hacking of her YouTube channel and email addresses, and the game dedicated to punching her in the face. That's like the trifecta right there. That's like what every other article says about her. When I say every other, I mean like 50% of them. Like every other one says that about her. Not all of them, just half of them. So in this one's called E-Sources on Women and Gender. This was in Feminist Collections, a quarterly of women in study resources. This is really like just a resource sheet that you would hand to somebody who wanted to learn about feminism and gender studies and stuff. And Anita's just listed in it. So it's not bad at all. It's she's just listed like it's a uh, I want to say a phone book, but really just a good Craigslist listing of all the different places you can go online to find out about women's studies. You know, phone book. I'm showing my age, aren't I? Fucking phone book. Phone book. So this one is a medley of meanings, insights from an instance of gameplay in League of Legends. And when they mention Sarkeesian, it's because of the linking these with negative, often objectifying depictions of women in mainstream games, and then it references a work of Sarkeesian in 2013, and that work is da, 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 the YouTube video. So again, her YouTube videos are being referenced in academic articles. This one showed up in the Journal of Comparative Research in Anthropology and Sociology. You know, next we have this is exploring Minecraft as a uh, pedagogy to motivate girls' literacy practices in the secondary English classroom. So Sarkeesian is referenced here for her campaign against video game representations of violence against women, but really she's being cited because of the abuse directed at her, not her actual body of work, but she's really just slightly mentioned. And then Rose McGowan being criticized uh, or criticizing advertisements for um, that X-Men Apocalypse big billboard that showed uh, Jennifer Lawrence being choked. You know, that was a thing back in the day. So this is just an editorial, right? So this happened at the end of the journal Women's Studies, and let's see, at the end of Women's Studies journal, uh, it's talking about a report by Cherie Todd on the hashtag Gamergate controversy that would be within the journal, but following on from the misogynistic attacks on Anita Sarkeesian, among others, as the result of her critique of the sexism rife within the gaming culture. More about the stuff that happened to her rather than what she's actually saying. This right here is an article that was in the journal Culture, Society, and Masculinities. It was called Tipping the Iceberg, Positionality and Male Privilege in Addressing Sexual Violence Against Women. And where they mention Sarkeesian, it's how she's been an outspoken critic of violence against women in video games. And then it goes on to talk about how she had to cancel a talk at Utah State University after receiving a threat there would be a mass shooting event. And she's also been driven home by. She's also been driven from her home by death threats. And more about what's happened to her, not what she's actually saying. Let's see. This is about. Okay, this one was in the oral history review, um, and it's actually like an abstract of a book that you can buy, but it's listed as an academic journal, um, and the books kind of have like DOIs where they're academic pieces that you can look up the same way as journals, but they're actually books. And in this one, Anita is just listed as being the person seen most prominently in the extreme vitriol hurled at media critic Anita Sarkeesian in the Gamergate controversy, because misogyny permeates contemporary game culture. Again, what's happening to her, not what she actually said. Um, in this journal, Sarkeesian is mentioned in Australian feminist studies, and it's because of her Kickstarter campaign for tropes versus women in video games. And I think this is more about her body of work than the actual shit that happened to her. So I think this is a good listing, you know? Anyways, this one right here, again, just mentions the video game Beat Up Anita Sarkeesian. Uh, and it is in a book review, and the review is called Play Matters, which was in the American Journal of Play. This one is just a footnote that mentions Anita Sarkeesian, and it's referencing a gotcha moment, right? So the gotcha moment is uh, this video clip that made the rounds online, where Anita Sarkeesian said that she was not a fan of video games before she ever became a video game uh, critic, putting out critiques of gaming culture. And, it was a moment. But I'm going to call this actually a good citation because it actually was citing something that she said, not something that happened to her in the form of violence. So this was in arguing for an immersive method, reflexive meaning making, the visible researcher, and moral responses to gameplay. Uh, Again, in the Journal of Comparative Research in Anthropology and Sociology. Uh, it's time for the last one. After like 3 hours of these videos on uh, finding studies where Anita Sarkeesian is in them. This is the last one I want to share with you guys. Okay. Um, the last one. Here we go. It is actually called A Conspiracy of Fishes, or How We Learn to Stop Worrying About #Gamergate and Embrace Hegemonic Masculinity. And it is by Shira Chess and Adrienne Shaw, Adrian Shaw, I think a lot of you will recognize if you are familiar with the battle between social justice warriors and shitlords here on YouTube that raged between 2014 to maybe as late as 2016, right? Um, Basically, I'm recommending this particular uh, article, which was in the Journal of Broadcasting and Electronic Media uh, by Rutledge, and in it, basically, there's this. I'll just tell the story for you guys, and then we'll be done with this. So there was in 2014 a fishbowl, which is actually an event at a conference where nobody is the featured speaker, right? They had a shared Google Doc where anyone uh, in the audience could edit the Google Doc to make a pretty good transcription of uh, the discourse that took place in the fishbowl, right? And so when they did this, there were people who showed up who wanted to talk about feminism in video games and racism in video games, and they kind of, uh, as if they were plants, you know, they kind of took over the conversation by forcing people to talk about that. But um, they didn't really fit what the actual topic was supposed to be for the fishbowl. But what's important to YouTube history is that Google Doc from that fishbowl, right? That was the source of, uh, I'd say, a month worth of content for Sargon of Akkad, who is mentioned in that study. And so the conference was DIGRA, the Digital Gaming uh, something something something. I forget. Uh, but DIGRA was the event, right? So Sargon of Akkad was trying to connect all of the people in that fishbowl as being part of a conspiracy where I guess they're all linked, kind of like how Zoe Quinn supposedly was sleeping with all the gaming journalists who would be reviewing her games, stuff like that, right? So a lot was made out of this shared document, right? And in this journal um, article, Shira Chess and Adrian Shaw basically make a good narrative from their perspective as people who are actually in the fishbowl as to their responses to a month worth of videos by Sargon of Akkad, right? I recommend this one article to everybody who was around during that time. I'll show it again. It's the A Conspiracy of Fishes article, and you can actually find it for free online. I think it was the best read out of all of these uh, journal articles that I've found mentioning Anita Sarkeesian. And that is the end of the road for this deep dive. It's almost 3 hours of YouTube footage of me just talking about all of these studies. I did not feature even half of what I found because I feel like I've shown a pretty good cross section of what I did find, and it would just take another 10 hours of me talking about the same issues of articles that are talking about what happened to Anita Sarkeesian rather than actually what's within her body of work. That to me was the biggest takeaway from all of this was she is famous among academia for being harassed. And, you know, anything that actually came up in her body of work may trickle into academia, but her harassment really is uh, a source of fascination in academia. So that's all I got. Um, Thank you guys for watching if you did, and I'll be moving on to another topic tomorrow.